with you via our social media platforms.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Export TT's Funding Services Awareness Webinar. My name is Betty Ann Ryan, and I am a business advisor here at Export TT Limited. Before we begin, let me just go over some ground rules with you. Firstly, please ensure that you are logged into the Zoom platform with your full name and the name of the company you are representing. To do so, please go into the participants listing and look for the name that you are signed in as, and then go into More, and you will see the word Rename. Insert your first name, surname, and your company name. You will also notice that your microphones are muted, your cameras are turned off, and the chat box is inaccessible. All the presentations will be emailed to you this week. You will notice at the end of each presentation, there will be contact information so that you can email all your questions, etc., for the services being presented today to the relevant persons. I will now invite our manager of the Capacity Building and Funding Unit at Export TT Limited, Mr. Kristen Maraj, to give the opening remarks.
Thank you, Betty. Good morning, everyone. Pleasant good morning to all. Special good morning to our guest presenters, and of course, you, our specially invited participants. Thanks for spending the time with us this morning. So a little bit about Export TT and what we set about to do here this morning. So Export TT is the National Export Facilitation Organization of Trinidad and Tobago. We are charged with generating export growth and diversification in the non-energy goods and services sectors. This means that what we do includes creating new exporters as well as supporting companies and exporters who are already exporting to increase their exports and to enter new markets as well. Our ultimate objective is to develop a sustainable and diversified export sector for Trinidad and Tobago. So our focus is on the non-energy goods and services. We are a customer-centric organization. We are results-driven, and we are the home to resident expertise in the matters of international trade. So together with what we're talking about this morning, we actually have different departments that can help you with market research, for example, which is something that's really crucial for you in doing your export planning and then your eventual market entry or expansion. So as part of the overall support that we offer to assist companies to improve their export readiness, we provide funding, and that's what we'll discuss this morning. It's the funding that can offset the costs of certain export readiness, export-related activities. This session was designed to present in a concise but clear manner these services that are offered to you in the form of funding. And what I should say about funding, because I know this is a question that comes up often, these aren't loans. These are grant funds. So you wouldn't be required to actually pay anything back to Export TT. So bear that in mind. That everything we discussed this morning is funding, grant funding. And of course, with this information, we are hoping that you can incorporate the knowledge of what can be offered by Export TT into your export planning and into your strategic planning. And of course, here at Export TT, we can provide any additional support to you that is required for your export growth. Now, we won't, during the session this morning, we won't be taking direct questions and answers. However, each presenter will provide their contact information. So feel free to contact any of the presenters regarding anything that is discussed here this morning. I would also, you can take note of my email address as well. It's cmaharaj@exporttt.co.tt, and my mobile number is 796-4276. So some of the funding that is available to you covers support for costs related to standards and certifications that are required for market entry. This is extremely important when it comes to market entry, particularly for the extra-regional markets, the US, UK, Europe, and beyond. We'll also address what kind of support can be given for testing and labeling, product modification, trade show attendance, website development, research and development activities that you may have in mind. And we'll also speak about how funding can be used to assist with the acquisition of production equipment for your company. Now, in addition to that, we are very fortunate this morning to have Incepra Limited with us. They are one of the suppliers, one of the local suppliers of machinery and equipment that is particularly beneficial to food and beverage clients, but clients overall who are, for example, seeking to get international certifications such as your HACCP or your ISO when there are pieces of equipment as required. So Incepra will be speaking to us about two pieces of equipment that that their company offers as one of the local companies who offer the sort of equipment. And it's for you to bear in mind that this is a service, a product that is offered by that company. They will also speak to us a bit about how this is incorporated into international standards or requirements. And we have another guest presenting company, SGS Trinidad Limited. SGS Limited is one of the leading testing, inspection, and certification companies globally. They actually do the certification for your products after your compliance and audits are done. And of course, they also assist with testing, inspection, and certification. So we are fortunate to have them on board as well, and they will provide some insight into the processes involved with the services that they offer. So we all know that over the past 2 years, it has been particularly challenging for firms, for potential exporters, and indeed exporters, established exporters as well. And I mean, given the uncertainty generated by the ongoing pandemic, I know we are working our way out of it, but there still is a level of uncertainty that exists there. And this webinar this morning, as well as all the services offered by Export TT, is there to help provide support to assist your export growth. And it might be required more so in these strange times in which we operate. So that would be my brief introduction there. I thank you all again for attending, and we look forward to emails and the queries from you after this webinar. Thank you very much and have a great morning.
Thank you, Chrisen. Our first presenter today is Mr. Navin Rupansingh. Mr. Rupansingh is the Export Sales Engineer at Incepra Limited. Over to you, Mr. Rupansingh.
Morning, everyone. Thanks a lot. Let me just share the presentation. So as I said, good morning, everyone. My name is Navin Pansing, and I'm the export sales engineer at Incepra Limited. I have been involved with assisting manufacturing and distribution companies throughout the region for a number of years with regards to coding, marking, and labeling, as well as metal detection and other inline solutions. Right. A little background on Incepra. First of all, Incepra is a Caribbean-based organization that provides manufacturing solutions as well as for distribution companies as well. We are 19 years in the business, 20 years in July, so that's quite an accomplishment. We provide high-quality products and machinery from our strong international partnerships, and we base our company to be service-oriented and customer-focused. These are some of the recognizable names that you would see in the manufacturing industry with regards to equipment for coding, marking, and labeling, as well as other inline solutions. All right, so first of all, why does product and packaging coding matter? Coding and marking machines are an integral contributor to the manufacturing process. It includes the addition of barcodes, serialization codes, expiry dates, best before dates, or best by dates. Their purpose is to keep manufacturers, retailers, and consumers informed about a product, its origin, authenticity, and shelf life. Some of the important factors for product coding are below. They meet traceability requirements and guidelines. This pertains to tracking products using codes such as batch numbers, lot numbers, or even shift codes in the event that product recalls or other quality checks are needed. This usually follows guidelines set by regulations. Another importance is to deliver assurance on product authenticity. Special codes can be added to genuine products to negate any counterfeit products making its way into the market. But if they do, they can be identified by checking the codes on the items. We have seen this recently with tobacco and alcohol illicit trade. To provide information about product freshness, the manufacture dates, best before dates, etc., would indicate how long the product was actually made, when it should be consumed or safely, or it should be discarded. It builds a positive relationship with your brand. Having the prior mentioned information, such as the dates, ensuring that the traceability requirements are there, these give the customer a sense that this particular brand is concerned with proper procedure and follows customer requirement guidelines, which in turn builds your brand. All right, so there are different types of machinery to code, mark, and label your products to ensure that it meets proper product quality standards. These can encompass integrated solutions, as you see, both printing and labeling simultaneously. These combine both printing and labeling machines at the same time. For example, a labeler applying a standard or generic code can be outfitted with a printer or coder to add specific details such as batch numbers, product dates, for examples, to the label, and then it is applied to the product. Vision systems. There are systems that can scan or check the code after it is printed to verify, one, that the code is actually printed, if the code is readable, and also to check if the code is correct. So it actually cross-references it with your database and ensures that the product code is actually right for that product. All right, software automation using Quick Design. Software is also available to add real-time data such as information, for example, from scales. So you have like a product weight that is pulled from a system and added directly to a label to add on your product. So these are quite interesting as well. We have custom designed labeling machines and much more. So the custom design labeling machines, based on your requirements, custom built machines, requirements may be various speeds, sizes of labels, orientation, as well as the application method can be done. So this would be an example or examples of some of the equipment that contributes to the actual coding of products. To the top, you would see products that actually go directly on on products. To the right-hand side, you would see in the person's hand, this is actually an example of a machine that codes on cases. Below, you would see examples of labelers. And if you look closely to the bottom right, the little blue square, this would be an integrated coder with the labeling machine. Right. Here you would see some of the examples of coding and some of the products that can be coded. It's far and wide. So there's a lot of different product shapes, sizes, etc. can be coded. Even items that not for general consumption. For example, to the right top, you would see the wire has coding on it as well. This can also be done using printers or coding equipment. Another example of a coding and marking solution would be desktop label printers. Just an example, they can provide labels for processes that are not fully or semi-automated. Labels are designed, printed, and then manually applied to products or even pallets. These desktop labels are standalone units. Ethernet, USB interfaces are built in. Quite inexpensive units, low cost of ownership, very high definition labels, easy integration in your line as it requires no additional setup or training. The software, everything is provided with the machines, and they come direct thermal as well as thermal transfer units. Quite simple machine software. All right, so as we move along to the metal detection systems, and as it pertains to food production, today, most of the food industry produces goods with the utmost efficiency, creating as much quality products as possible. So to protect brands and customer appeal, many companies have adopted and implemented high-end metal detection systems in their product lines. These detection technologies meet HACCP requirements, was mentioned prior. So this is the hazard analysis and critical control point requirements. This is the framework for ensuring that end product, which is food, ready for consumption, safe to eat, and more specifically, it looks to introduce checks and standards that reduce as far as possible any risk. So it does this with the aim of reducing chemical, physical, and biological risk to people. The chemical risk would be, for example, toxic contamination, things like that. The physical would be metals, and biological maybe bacteria. So the focus of this would be the physical aspect, which is the metal detection. The ability to detect imperfections and unsuitable products before they reach a customer is a strong advantage to have in any food business, aiding to prevent any brand ruining recalls or legal actions that may come from manufacturing unsafe products. When these crucial steps are ignored or handled incorrectly, the results could be non-compliance and allowing product impurities to go unnoticed. Both scenarios could be detrimental to a company and their brand. All right, so there are various types of metal detection systems that are suited for all manufacturers. They can be utilized to provide compliance with food safety standards. These are just some of the standards internationally. Retailers' code of practice, legislations, and industry guidance. These can include X-ray systems, magnetic inspection analysis, as well as checkware systems and sorting systems. Recently, there have been a lot of changes with regulations and policies, both locally and internationally. So we have seen the increased requirement for these machines to be needed by manufacturers for export as well as locally. Here you would see some of the examples of products that are examined using metal detectors, meat and sausage products, anything more or less along the food line, based on the requirements, different density products, liquid, things like that would more or less dictate whether you need X-ray metal detection systems. But generally, these are some of the products that are tested or scanned locally and in exports. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. The presentation will be shared with everyone, so feel free to reach out as mentioned. Our contact information will be here if you need any other information or assistance regarding what was covered. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Rupan Singh. Our other presenter is Ms. Denise Estrada. Ms. Estrada is the Regional Manager for Knowledge at S&G Trinidad Limited. Over to you, Ms. Estrada.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for the space. I will share my screen. Please let me know when you see it. Good, I'm starting. Thank you for the space. As was mentioned, my name is Denise Estrada. I'm the business manager for Knowledge Solutions in SGS Central American Caribbean. I'm here as well with my partner, Wasim Agan, which is our branch manager in SGS Trinidad. We are going to discuss a little bit of SGS for you to know who we are and our special focus to the knowledge solution, which is towards certification, training, and some other important services that can support your certification system. For you to know, SGS has more than 140 years in the market. We are #1 world leader company in services as certification, inspection, testing, and verification services. As SGS, we work toward 5 principal pillars that I'm going to discuss a little bit. We support around our global network, our quality service guidance globally, our industry expertise. We work toward many different industries. We are looking a lot on making more solutions with digital innovation that support and enhance your systems. And of course, our social responsibility with the environment. Our industry expertise, as SGS, we take a lot of over 15 years working on certification for many different industries. One of the principles that we attend in Trinidad is a lot of oil and gas companies, food and agricultural companies, which are really a major presence locally in Trinidad, but as well in SGS Global, we attend different industries as forestry, pharma, construction, transportation, chemical, which make us a really knowledge to provide when we certify your system certification. As well, we have a global support network with more than 93,000 employees, 2,600 offices, and presence in 89 countries, which make us really strong when we want to audit and present our services not only to local companies, but as well to a global approach. We are based in SGS Trinidad. We are in San Fernando. This is one of our major strengths. We have more than 35 years in the market, in the local market. And we have, as I mentioned, we have our management team there to attend every requirement and every need that you have. As well, we have our resources for inspection and for auditing that work toward the region and are moving in the Caribbean as well. How our services can impact your business? Well, we have these several areas in which we can support you, but as well, our intention and our solutions to you is to provide you a business impact. What would you gain when you get a certification is you will have the certainty that you have an external eyes that as SGS is an independent body that will support you with your compliance with legal requirements, with your support on assessing processes, how do you minimize the impacts and work toward business continuity to have a business the next day. No, I think that's one of the major interested and impacts that you will have going through a certification process, going through an auditing process, and of course to protect your brand reputation. What are major services? We have 5 pillars of services. One of them, and the most known for everybody, is the certification process that I will talk a little bit more for you guys. Training, supply chain assurance, ESG assurance, which is a social government that is a new trend that is coming to make sure you are compliant with the environmental and with the politics and integrity. And of course, we can support you as well with technical consultants. On the certification side, we work a lot with certification regulations as ISOs, like ISO 9001, that is going to support you with quality, but we also have another certifications that are internationally recognized towards sustainability, toward health and safety, we also work with local entities to audit some regulatory compliance or country regulations, which we, as well as SGS, are able to support. And of course, one new trend that we are auditing and certifying is the information security. These all certification services are usually based on a major standard, a global standard, which we could certify. These are one of the most common certification and more demanded certifications in a region. And as well, I want to comment on you on the new trends that we are certifying right now. We have a really strong interest right now on certification of neutral carbon, which is really to reduce the CO2 emissions. We are able to that training and support the companies to achieve their sustainability goals as well. We are also being really responsible with the social auditing, which is a standard that is SMETA, that as well is recognized globally through the big retailers, and support as well for you to be sure you are complying with the best social practices for your company on health, safety, and integrity as well. The certification process usually have a 3-year period, in which we could start with, I'm going to make a really short explanation on how this certification process could be work with each company. As mentioned, we have to raise some information about your scope of work. With that, we make a submit of proposal, and you have the option of a pre-audit. If you don't feel like you are ready to go directly to a certification process, you are able to be to have a pre-audit to know what are your gaps before the start of the certification. Usually a certification process has a 3-year component. The first year we have two audits, which is stage 1 and stage 2 that have to be complied in a period of 6 months, the first year. And these two processes will help you and will make sure you achieve your certification process. After that, we have 2 periods of 1 year surveillance visit to make sure you continue your system, that the system is working, and to make sure the culture and all the non-conformities are implemented. By the end of the 3 years, you usually are able to go to a recertification process and renew your certificate for another 3-year period. Basically, this is the common process. A certification is an investment that is going to be each year. Is not a one only investment, but this process will assure that you have a system running for a period of 3 years. Another pillar for us is training services. In training services, we also provide training toward these ISO and regulatory standards, but as well, we customize some training according to industry expertise, or sometimes companies require a little bit more on working soft skill abilities. So we have a very diversified portfolio to provide training services to enhance your system certification, but as well your industry's requirements. We have 3 different modalities to offer trainings. It could be face-to-face, which are presential, basically. We have digital solutions trainings in which we can have one-to-one classes between internet, or we have a portal in SGS Academy in which you can configure your trainings and take it at the time you want, at the hour you want. As well, if we are able to provide blended training, which means we can do sometimes face-to-face or digital according to the needs or the requirements on the practical and theoretical side. So this is a really customized regulation. We have as well open trainings to the public in which you can subscribe and attend the classes with a tutor online, which support you and give you the information to implement and to know the different standards. One of the other services that we provide is to support and enhance the supply chain solution, which is really important in companies to make sure, and as a part of a certification process, make sure every stakeholder that have an impact in your compliance to deliver a product or deliver a service are under control. We work through that between these specific services, which are customized audits, that What does it mean? That we can, as SGS, go to audit your supply chain, your distributors, your suppliers, and make sure they are willing and they are aligned with your strategy, and of course, to support your brand reputation. Now, it's really critical for a business to be sure that your distributors or your suppliers are working in the same principles and in the same way that you need to obviously comply with your demand. We do make customized audits, social audits. We work a lot with big companies as Nestle, Unilever, Disney, which are really aware of the brand reputation and how it could damage if something make bad practices. So we audit your suppliers or their suppliers in different aspects to cover social good practices, environmental good practices, quality. And sometimes your suppliers are not willing yet to get a certification, and this is a solution that could support you with an audit, a minimum audit, and we can customize it to make sure we are your independent eyes to control the process and control this supply chain. As well, this is a new trend, SGA solutions, in which we are, as SGS, developing the best practices, and we create a standard which will help you to comply with environmental good practices, social good practices, and as well governance good practices. This is a new trend that is coming as well, relying to the sustainability goals that we all commit with the big 50 sustainable objectives, in which SGS as well is part, and is really interested because it's obviously this will support your brand reputation on the best practices to the market and to business continuity for the future. And this is a tool that we are developing right now in the region and that we are introducing as a new product for SGS. The last, and as well, this is a part of the components, we support you as well. Based on our industry's technical expertise, we can provide you a specific consultancy solution for a specific problems that your company could face. So we have an area in which we work toward specific needs, and this is really customized service. If you have any problem in your process, we, as well as SGS, are able to provide you technical expertise to support and to make sure you get your goal and fix your problems to optimize your operation and your certification systems. Finally, this is one of the major brands that work with us in all these different type of projects. As you see, we are attending a lot of different industries right now, and which support and trust us, and we expect as well of you to take contact with us and trust our services. If you have any doubt or any requirement, please contact us. We will be sharing as well our presentation and our service offers to you. And if you have any question, please feel free to reach me or Wasim directly in SGS Trinidad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Estrada. Next up, we will now present our Export TT funding services. Our first presentation will be from Mr. Ron David. Ron is a business advisor at Export TT Limited, and she will let us know about the Labeling and Product Testing Fund. Over to you, Ron.
Good morning, everyone. I am Rowan David, a business advisor at Export TT. I am now going to be sharing a presentation on the Labeling and Product Testing Fund.
Hi, can you all give us a few minutes? We are just having a little technical difficulty. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, but I was experiencing a little technical difficulty. So I'm now going to start the presentation on the Labeling and Product Testing Fund. The Labeling and Product Testing Fund will facilitate product testing, product and/or packaging modification, and labeling redesign required to meet export market preferences and requirements in export markets. These changes can be as a result of mandatory regulation, requirements for entry into certain markets, voluntary sustainability standards developed at local or international level by organizations from the public and private sectors for product environmental and social improvements, or consumer preference. So who can apply for this fund? The fund will cover 75% of the service costs to a ceiling of $80,000 TT, and the fund is paid directly to the supplier. Companies who are sole proprietors, partnerships, limited liability companies, wholly owned by Trinidad and Tobago nationals and are registered and operating in Trinidad and Tobago can apply. Companies must be in existence for a minimum of 2 years. And also, if the company has begun the modification process based on documented buyer interest, they can also apply for this fund. So the eligibility criteria would include companies who have potential export orders and require testing of samples to ensure that the target market standards are met. The testing can be done either by local authorities in Trinidad and Tobago or by accredited labs and approved authorities in the target market. We have companies which are seeking to enter new markets where packaging changes, including color, are required to meet the market entry requirements. For example, the bilingual packaging in Canada or bilingual packaging in Panama, for example. We're looking at testing for nutritional content and regulated substances, such as metals and cadmium in cocoa. Companies who need product modification based on documented buyer or market requirements, and companies which are required to undergo physical or formulation modification in order to meet target market requirements based on buyer preferences. The documents that need to be sent with the Labeling and Product Testing Fund application include a completed application form for the service, signed and approved by the authorized person within the company. The applications also must be signed by a commissioner of affidavits. You must supply business registration documents or completed Export TT rapid audit documents, and that document is just asking for basic information so we can check baseline data. So in future, when we are checking to see how you have progressed as a result of getting this labeling and protesting, we have something with which we are using as a starting point to see the change. We look for recent documented interest from the buyer in the target market for the product in the form of written communication, for example, an email or a letter of intent or contract. We would require documented evidence of professional advice that the product testing, the modification, for example, is required for the product acceptance in the target market. The company must show evidence of the financial capability to meet the company's obligation of the 25%. And if the application is for funding, the service is over $80,000, applicants will also have to submit evidence of their ability to meet the additional funding requirements. We market export plan will and implementation schedule from the supplier if it's available to be completed, and a pro forma invoice for the total cost of the service. So the applicants, in terms of the approval process, now the application form is available on Export TT's website. So once you complete the application and you send the completed application along with the supporting documents, the application will be evaluated. So only completed applications with all the supporting documents are sent to the evaluation committee, which will evaluate the application and approve or deny it. The approval process takes approximately 14 days. Once approved, a contract will be executed between Export TT and the applicant, committing the funds between the applicant and Export TT. And it will be prepared within, this contract will be prepared within 5 days, a maximum of 5 days from notice of approval. The company will then have to send us proof that they paid the 25% to the supplier. And after that, we will pay the remaining 75% balance of $80,000 to the supplier. So if you need more information on labeling and product testing, you can always contact me and I'll put my information in the chat box and I will provide any information that you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Up next, we have Mr. Jonathan Cicheran. Jonathan will present to you information on 3 funding facilities. That is the co-financing facility, research and development facility, and the grant fund facility. Over to you.
Hi, morning. Thanks for that introduction, Betty. Just confirming everyone could hear me and see my screen. Yeah?
Yes.
All right, good. So I'll start. So I'll just pick up from where Rowan left off in terms of the funding facilities. As Betty would have indicated, I will speak on 3 funding facilities today. The 3 funding facilities that I'll speak on deals with 3 main activities: market entry activities, innovation, and production capacity. All are elements to be successful in the export market. These grants that help with these 3 activities fall under the co-financing facility, the research and development facility, and the grant fund facility, respectively. Type of companies that can benefit from the funding facilities, I've just provided a short list, but this is a non-exhaustive list. There are many other companies in these and various sectors that can apply. So I've just highlighted just a few, such as food and beverage, agro-processing, software development, creative industries, etc. Moving quickly on to the co-financing facility. The co-financing facility is a facility that assists companies with export market entry activities. This would allow for companies to allocate more resources to different aspects of entering the export market. In terms of the specific activities that the co-financing facility covers, there are 8 specific items that the co-financing facility covers, namely first-time website development or e-commerce platform integration, shipping of samples to prospective buyers in overseas market, product testing, and this is product testing to meet export market entry requirements, label design modification, again to meet regulatory requirements to enter an export market, trade show participation, IP registration in an overseas market, translation and interpretation of export-related documents, and product or company registration in an overseas market. So the co-financing assists with any one of these 8 activities shown on this particular slide. In terms of the financing details, Co-financing will come in the form of 50% support in the form of 50% of the cost of the various market entry activities. And there are financial limits to these. So these limits are applied based on the size of the business. So for small businesses, you can get co-financing support for 50% of the cost of the market entry activities to a limit of 60,000 TT dollars per fiscal year. And the fiscal year runs from October 1st, 1 year to September 30th, the following year. And for small companies, the support, the financial support is paid to the supplier directly. For medium companies, it's 50% to a limit of 55,000 per fiscal year, and this is reimbursable, meaning that the company pays the money upon being approved. They go ahead and make the payments to their supplier, submit proof of payment, and then we then reimburse them the obligated amount. For large companies, 50,000 50% a limit of 50,000 TT dollars per fiscal year, and this is also on a reimbursable basis. In terms of some of the eligibility criteria, the applying company must be in operation for a minimum of 1 year. The company must be locally owned, and in terms of manufacturers, the product must be manufactured locally. In terms of the documents required for submission, for the co-financing facility, you'll need to submit your company registration documents, 1 year financial statements, preferably audited, and preferably the most recent statements that the company has. In the case where audited accounts aren't available, management accounts would suffice. However, it is preferable to have audited accounts or submit audited accounts. And specifically for the financial statements, you're looking at the profit and loss statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. You'll also need to submit quotes and invoices for the respective co-financing service that you would be applying for. And you'll also need to fully complete the co-financing application form. So submission of all these documents would then be determined to be an application as a whole, right? However, for certain activities, the evaluation committee reserves the right to ask for further information, separate and apart from what is mandatory and listed here on this particular slide. In terms of the process, well, you submit all the documentation to the business advisor for external funding. The business advisor would review the documents, and if it is suitable, take it to a co-financing evaluation committee. If not, feedback will be provided, so any missing information or any sort of reworking of any documents can be done and resubmitted. The evaluation committee will then review and make a decision. At that point, the committee can ask for supplemental information, upon which it is incumbent on the applicant to provide the necessary feedback for the evaluation to continue. If the co-financing application is approved, contracts are drafted and signed, and then disbursements are made according to a payment mechanism, right? A point to note, for approved contracts, disbursements, payments for the co-financing activity should be made after a contract is signed, right? So any payment made for a co-financing service prior to getting a decision from the committee will be considered null and void. Moving quickly along to the research and development facility. This particular facility deals with innovation, right? It is set up to provide assistance to companies who undertake research and development activities to bring to market new and innovative products and services. One of the main aim of the RDF is to support innovation and for companies to use innovation as a competitive enhancement or comparative advantage tool to get out there into the export market. Just on the topic of innovation, you'd see I've provided a broad definition of innovation as well as two distinct types of innovation. Now, there are many more types of innovation, but this is usually the the types of innovation that we see coming to us here via the RDF, right? So the ISO defines innovation as a new improved product or process that differs significantly from previous products or processes and is made available to users. We typically look at either product innovation or process innovation. So the product innovation would be the introduction of an improved good or service, and the process innovation has to do with the delivery approach of a particular good or service. The RDF itself is split up into 3 phases. Each phase has its own distinct area that it covers and its distinct funding limits. So phase 1 is to establish the technical merit or feasibility and commercial potential of our project. It is fundamentally to determine should a company undertake this particular project. That is the question that it tries to answer. In terms of, and as you would see here in the explanation, it will cover things like the technical and empirical market research to determine if if a project should in fact commence. In terms of the funding, it would be 70% of the total cost of that phase 1 activity to a limit of 100,000 TT dollars. And in terms of the time frame given to complete this phase 1, it would be over a 6-month period. Phase 2 is the product or service development phase, or the prototyping phase, or the phase where you develop a minimum viable product. So funding for this will be limited to 50% of the cost of the project to a maximum of 750,000 TT dollars, and you'll have a maximum of a 2-year period to develop this prototype. This simply means that if you want to max out the 750,000 TT dollars, you'll need to have a project of at least 1.5 million or above. Applicants could apply for either phase 1 or phase 2 at any point in time. They are not exclusive in that regard. However, phase 3, which is the commercialization phase, which is actually exclusive to phase 2 awardees, as it is set up to help commercialize those products and services developed coming out of a phase 2 project. So it is limited to phase 2 awardees, and there's a maximum limit of 150,000 TT dollars. Some points to note, especially with, well, overall with the RDF, just like the co-financing, any costs that are incurred prior to a decision being made will not be evaluated. So only costs that are yet to be incurred by the company is what are the costs that would be looked at. Specifically for phase 2, the sort of costs that would be looked at would be technical developmental costs, right? Across the board for the RDF, things like salaries and wages will not be considered. The RDF will only consider external costs that the company needs to incur for competencies for which they don't have the internal capabilities to do, right? So it is for external costs, salaries and wages are not included in those costs. There are several areas in which RDF project is scored. Specifically, these are weighted differently, but things like the degree of innovation, the degree of innovativeness, the commercial viability, the export potential, those things, the market research as well, those things are weighted fairly heavily. Similarly to the co-financing, this is open to all businesses and companies, but they must be established businesses in Trinidad and Tobago in operation for at least 1 year, and they must be locally owned. They must be from the non-energy manufacturing and services sector, and they must be able to show evidence of their being able to cover their required client contribution % of the project cost. Again, similarly to the co-financing, you'll need to submit your company registration documents, your company financials for at least 1 year, again, preferably audited. However, in this case, management accounts would suffice. So we're looking at your profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow statement, quotes and invoices for the works to be done. And again, bear in mind, only submit the quotes and invoices for works to be done and not for costs already incurred prior to submitting an application or costs that you would be incurring during the process before a decision is taken, right? There are RDF application forms, well, not application form, but project proposal forms rather. Each phase has their own project proposal form, so you will need to fill out the relevant one and submit it. Again, just like the co-financing facility, the committee reserves the right to ask for further information should there be a need to. Let me just quickly go over the process. Again, you submit all the documentation to the business advisor for funding. The advisor would review, and then if it is suitable, they'll take it to the evaluation committee. If not, the application will be asked to rework and then resubmit, right? Once the evaluation reviews, the evaluation committee reviews, they'll come to a decision. They can ask for supplemental information, as I mentioned previously, for which the applicant, it will be incumbent on them to provide the feedback in order for the evaluation to continue. If the application is approved, the contracts will be drafted and signed, and then disbursements will be made according to the payment mechanism outlined in the contract, in the agreement. However, if the application is denied, the applicant is informed of this, the areas in which scored poorly, and then they can choose to rework the application with these comments in mind, right? So there is that bit of leeway for you to rework the application should you choose to do so. One thing about the RDF is that the evaluation committee, in order for application to be approved, it must receive unanimous approval from the committee members. So if there are 4 committee members, it is not a majority, but all 4 members must agree that the application is approved before it is actually approved. Right? So let me just move on quickly to the grant fund facility. The grant fund facility is actually administered by Export TT. However, the applications and the evaluation is done by MTI, right? It really is set up for SMEs to purchase equipment to help bolster their production capacity so that they could produce more. Right? In terms of the funding details, the grant fund facility can provide support for the purchase of equipment to a maximum amount of 50% to a limit of 250,000 per beneficiary. So in order to max that 250, you'll need to have equipment purchases of at least 500,000 or above. Point to note, the grant fund facility doesn't cover any working capital, land and building costs, or any sort of installation costs. So please bear this in mind if you decide to apply. There are eligible areas. So if your company falls within any of these broad areas, that is the first indication that you may be eligible for the grant fund facility. Point to note here as well, under each one of these broad areas, there is a link on our website that takes you to the page with the grant fund facility, and under each one of these 8 areas, there are further sub sectors under each one that could help identify if your company is eligible in the first instance. Right? These are just some of the funding requirements. Again, these are all sent to the Ministry of Trade and Industry. They assess the application, they do the evaluation. Export TT comes in after approval. If an application is approved, we deal with the approved applications, we draft the contract, the agreement, and we execute the agreement and make the disbursements. Right? So these are just a list of the requirements for the grant fund facility. Again, who is it open to? Much like the other 2, you're looking at sole proprietors, partnerships, companies wholly owned by Trinidad and Tobago National. A point to note here, as and it will be different from the co-financing and the RDF, whereas the RDF and co-financing required 1 year financial, and there was an option to submit management account. For this particular grant fund facility, you'll need to have at least 2 years of audited accounts to submit as mandatory. So please bear that in mind, right? So the type of companies that will be assessed are those companies that are export oriented or producing an import substitute, or some combination of the both. Just a bit about the application process. You complete the application form, you submit submit the application, all supporting documents to the MTI, specifically the Investment Directorate. They'll conduct a site visit. The proposal will be assessed. Official communication of decision would be sent to the applicant. If it is approved, an approval letter would be sent to Export TT as well, where we will then execute a grant agreement between the successful applicant and ourselves and make the payments directly to the supplier, directly to the company's supplier. So that is another thing to note. This isn't a reimbursable grant. However, it is a grant where the support is paid directly to your supplier, well, the successful applicant supplier. This is just, if you want any further information, feel free to contact me either via telephone or via email. So I thank you for your time. So Betty, back to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Our final presentation will be done by myself, Betty-Ann Ryan, and I will be presenting to you information on 2 funding facilities that we offer. They are the Standards Implementation Grant and the International Certification Grant. Please allow me to share the presentation. Good. Okay, good morning once again. The purpose of this grant is to help manufacturing companies meet international standards in order to export their product or products. This grant provides a pathway to international standard certifications, which includes a production process as well as a product or service for specific standards. It also helps a company to access a comprehensive range of export readiness and training towards their goal. This grant can be used for the implementation of international standards such as food safety standards, ISO, etc. in your organization. Now, companies can access 50% of the total cost up to 70,000 TT dollars on a reimbursable basis. Now, this means that the company will have to pay their supplier first, and then we will reimburse the company 50% of that amount and not the full amount they paid their supplier. Of course, this will be in accordance with our contract terms and conditions, etc. Remember that the amount that can be reimbursed is up to 70,000 TT dollars. International Certification Fund, also known as the ICF. Who is eligible? Sole proprietors, partnerships, or companies wholly owned by Trinidad and Tobago nationals and registered and operating in Trinidad and Tobago. Firms that demonstrate a potential to develop a sustainable export base. Firms established for a minimum of 1 year. Firms earn revenue from export sales or produce an import substitute. Firms engage in the production of non-energy exports with export sales less than $4 million. Firms contributing to import substitution with sales turnover less than 25 million TT dollars. Criteria for assessment. Applicants will be assessed based on quality and completeness of documentation submitted, level of export orientation, import substitution, import funded activity on future export growth, import substitution of the firm, and the overall impact of the domestic economy. The International Certification Fund assists manufacturers and exporters in achieving international certification in product compliance with the aim to 1. Increase non-energy exports, meet the recognized quality and safety standards to compete with imported goods on the local markets. Well, that is import substitution. Comply with the requirements of international franchises and projects to result in more innovative, productive, and internationally competitive firms, and to generate new foreign exchange and reduce the consumption of scarce foreign exchange in Trinidad and Tobago. Funding will be provided in the form of grants and will be limited to 1 grant per beneficiary or per group of companies for 1 or more eligible activities. Funding shall be limited to 500,000 TT dollars per beneficiary and will cover the costs associated to meet recognized product standards as approved by Export TT and evidenced by certified proposals or invoices. Companies will not qualify for another related grant under Export TT for replicated requirements. Required documents. Some of the documentation that required are the completed application form, documentary evidence of the cost of requirements to implement standards compliance, business plan, including but not limited to economic linkages and foreign exchange earning capabilities, an export plan, audited financial statements for the previous year of operation, business registration documents, BIR tax clearance certificate and value-added tax clearance certificate, company NIS certificate, documentary evidence of the company's capability to fund 25% or 50% of the cost of requirements to implement standards compliance in the instance where the firm's export sales is less than $2 million, between $2 million and $4 million, and a police certificate of character for applicants. The committee well, Export TT reserves the right to ask for additional information based on the requirement of the committee. Okay, so should you require any clarification or need more information on these two grants that I just presented, please do not hesitate to contact me at bnorine@exporttt.co.tt on my telephone, on the company telephone at extension 7925, or my mobile at 316-9164. Again, 316-9164. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Okay, I will now give you the closing remarks. On behalf of Export TT Limited, I want to thank everyone who took the time to join us today. To our presenters, thank you for a very informative session. Remember that all the presentations will be forwarded to you this week, so feel free to reach out should you have any questions or need clarification, etc. Again, once again, thank you for joining, and do enjoy the rest of your day, and above all, be safe. And you all can look out for these presentations by Friday. Thank you.